Hi, my name is Walter Lesh, and today I would like to talk about how to resolve sound problems on your devices. This is episode 3 of Online in Rocky River and Beyond. So let's first talk about some general steps that you can use to resolve sound problems. When you're doing this, these should be things that are helpful irrespective of the kind of device that you have. But when you're doing this, make sure that you have another device if you can. If at all possible, have a secondary internet connected device that you can use to look things up as you troubleshoot the device having the problem. And the first step in troubleshooting is always document. Make sure that you've written down what your device is, what problem is it having. Is it an isolated issue in a particular website or app, or is it something more general? Try to describe it. And always write down what you've tried so that you don't do the same thing over and over. A good technician is going to ask you what you've done and all these other questions, and then they'll probably make you do everything you tried already, but at least you'll know that you did that. Another step is to make sure that the device is powered on. Is it charged? Right? Is it charged enough? And step 3, are all the cords connected? Most of us have wireless things now, but if it has cords, make sure they're seated properly. Make sure things aren't just slightly unplugged. The Goldilocks principle of too much or too little might apply here. Is it too hard to plug it in? Is it too easy to plug it in? Is it too tight, too loose? Things like that. The fourth step would be, when you're checking those cords to make sure they're seated, look at the condition of the cord. Even if it looks great, maybe it's worth substituting a different cord to see if that is the difference. Sometimes things break and we can't tell. This fifth step I've broken into 3 parts. And in this initial step, I've called it stop or exit, stop, or close the site, service, or app. So this step is a little different on different kinds of devices, so I wanted to address that. On Android devices, there's usually a button. Well, there's always something to press to get to this list of open and running apps. So on this Android device in landscape view, you can see that double box, and that's usually the symbol, something that's repeated so that it gives you the idea it's going to bring up this list of running apps. And you can swipe up in this case, or on the picture to the right of that, you can swipe to the right, or as the arrow is kind of pointing there, you can click on the little X for each app and close it that way too. On iOS devices, which means Apple devices, it depends on when you got it and what you have as to how you get to this list of what they call apps that are suspended in the background. This is sometimes referred to as the app switcher as well. And in portrait view on an old iPad, I get to that by double pressing my home button. Any iPhone 8 or earlier, I think you do it that way. And on any iPad that has a button, that's how you get to the app switcher. You double press it quickly. And then to close those apps, to exit them completely, you would swipe up I think it's always up on the Apple devices. So the picture next to that is a portrait view on a newer iPhone, and with the newer devices you drag from the bottom of the screen up and hold in the middle until you see the app switcher open. In Windows usually, hopefully always, have X's, and that's the way you close a program that way. There is a task list, but this will be easy enough for you on your screen. Usually just look for the X for that window and click it. So that's that first part, the fifth step, right? The fifth step, another secondary step here is if closing the window and reopening doesn't work, try signing out of the service or site or app. And that means, actually clicking something that says sign out and then having to sign back in again. If you're not challenged for credentials when you open it the next time, you probably didn't sign out. And a final step would be to restart the device, right? right? On a newer iPhone, you have to press the up and screen buttons at the same time to get the slide to power off control. On Windows, it's a little easier. You click on the Windows flag there, the Windows symbol, and you click on power and then choose restart. Choose restart over shutdown. It does a better job of making sure everything resets. And on Android devices, there's usually some procedure. On older Apple devices and on most Android devices, you simply hold in the power button until you see something about shutting it off. And then to turn it back on, you hold in the power button again until you see something. Okay, well, so none of that worked. So now what? I'm going to go through a few steps for each device, each kind of device, and hopefully those steps, additional steps, will help you figure out sound problems. The simplest volume control on Windows 10 is next to the time and date on the taskbar. So I'm going to left click that, and it opens up and it shows me that my speakers, my headphones are set to 100%. And I can slide that back and forth by grabbing it with my left mouse button and dragging. See how the speaker icon gets fewer waves or more waves? If I want, I can click those waves and it will mute the sound, or I can click it again and it unmutes the sound. I can also, if I have multiple devices for sound output attached to the machine, I can choose between them. Here I only have the speakers, but there would be a drop-down arrow here, and when I click it, I could switch between devices. Each device has its own sound level, so you want to look and make sure that you have sound set on whichever device you switch to. Another thing that I can do with that speaker icon is I can right-click it. And when I right-click it, I'm presented with additional choices. One of those choices is to open the volume mixer. The volume mixer gives me an easy way to set sounds either for individual applications, so I can have loud on one application, soft on another, or the general device volume. So if I move this one, it will move all the other ones up and down proportionally. And I can click the X to get out of that. Another thing that I can get to inside that right-click menu for the sound icon is the sound settings. And I've switched to a different layout a little bit because this window is going to be pretty big. And so I open it up, and in here I'm basically in the settings app, and I have double-clicked on or clicked on system, and then in the system section of settings we find the sound area, and that allows me here again to switch between output devices. My master volume, which I set to 100, can be adjusted here. And what's kind of an important thing in Windows 10 are all of these troubleshooters. I can run the troubleshooter and it will take a minute. It will go through its thing. Let me move it out here so you can see it doing its thing. So it's running, and it's not gonna find any problems because right now I don't have any, so I'm going to cancel it. But it may give you the answer right there. So keep that in mind. There are all kinds of troubleshooters now built into Windows 10 to help you diagnose and manage problems. As I scroll down, you can see that there's an output section and an input section, and then some advanced sound options. Below that, I even have a way to get to the old control panel from Windows 7 and before. So if you were really used to using that app, so to speak, you can still get to it by clicking Sound Control Panel here. One of the things that I can check on an iOS device, that is an Apple device, is to see if it has a mute switch. And that mute switch is right above the volume buttons here. It's so tiny you can't really see it, but I actually have to stick my fingernail in there to slide it. I've turned it on, and now I've turned it back off. You can see that at the top of the Apple screen there. Another thing that I can do, of course, is I can use the volume buttons. And when you do that, you can see it sliding up and down the side of the screen there. If I were to grab that, I could pull it out and make it bigger and slide up and down that way. Another thing I can do is I can access the control center. The control center is accessed in different ways depending on the age of your Apple device. On older devices, you swiped up from the bottom, and that showed a gray control center with black dark buttons usually. And in the newer devices, you swipe down from the upper right corner, and that opens it up. Here again, I have a slider to move the volume up and down here. And another thing that can happen is, should Bluetooth be on or off? Here I have Bluetooth turned on, as well as Wi-Fi and cellular data. And if Bluetooth is off and you have wireless earbuds, you're not going to hear out of them. So you have to decide, is Bluetooth supposed to be on or off? Most recommendations say only turn Bluetooth on when you need it. But if it's also in airplane mode, that's going to prevent a lot of things from happening. You won't get communications in and out of your device. So the volume slider is accessible in a couple of different ways. Now, back to settings. So in my settings app, I've already scrolled down a little bit, so I wouldn't reveal my superhero identity to you all. But in here, there's a section called Sounds and Haptics. In an older device, it's just called Sounds. But when I touch Sounds and Haptics, I get a lot of controls in here for sound. And it may be the problem is in here somewhere. If I want to make my ringtone louder or softer, I can come in here and slide that up and down. And if I want to be able to change it with my volume buttons, I would need to turn that slider switch right below it on. I can change my ringtones, all the kinds of sounds that it makes. I can change whether it makes noise when I touch the device. That system haptics switch turns on and off. So a lot of them are slider switches or slider level controls. If I come back out and I scroll down some more, I start seeing a list of apps. There could be sound controls in individual apps. And in an Apple device, those are all listed under settings. So at the bottom of the settings app are listed all of the things that you have on your device. Android phones and Android devices in general can be difficult for people because they differ from one device to another. So Android can be modified by both the carrier as well as the manufacturer of the device. So if it's a Samsung smartphone and you're on the Verizon network, that may be different than a Samsung phone on the AT&T network. And I can do some very simple things to check sound though. So the volume controls, which are on the side of the device, bring open that little drop down where I can grab that and slide the ringtone, but I can also change the volume of 3 other areas by pressing the little drop down that's up there. And that opens up the media volume, the notifications volume, and the system volume. And that disappears if you don't touch it. When I go into settings, I've sort of got things set up here, so I'm just going to touch it that way. I've got a section here called Sounds and Vibrations. You can get to settings by pulling down from the top and clicking on that little black gear above the airplane, in my case, the little black gear. You can also get to it through an app icon as well. So here in the sounds and vibration area, there are a couple of different important areas. One is sound mode at the top there. When I touch sound mode, I can switch to mute. That might explain why there's no sound coming from your device. And I've also got a do not disturb switch. Do not disturb, when it's on, means only the things that I want to allow through, like a call from a particular phone number, can get through. So that is an important thing to check also. You've also got notification sounds in here, and volume right below vibrate while ringing. Volume opens up those 4 things we saw before. Right? So let me go into another things, because on an Apple device, all of the settings for each app are still gathered in the settings app, whereas on an Android device, the settings are in the individual apps. I've opened up settings on Google Chrome in order to preserve my superhero identity, I've already opened that. But at the top of Chrome, you've got three little dots, right, in an app. And when you touch that, you can go into settings. That's from the resulting menu. And here I'm in settings, and I've scrolled down to where it says site settings. Site settings in an app, in Chrome, allow me to determine whether I want the sound to be allowed on a particular website. So I scroll down here and you can see it says sound. So if I were to disallow that, it would allow me to not hear things. Even if a video was playing automatically when I got to that website, I wouldn't hear it because I've turned off sound. On a Windows 10 machine with Chrome, you can right-click on the tab and then choose Mute Site, and it will remember that. So even the next day when you go back to that same site, it will stay muted. So something to keep in mind. On an Android device, each app has its own settings, and there could be sound settings in that app. Before I mention some other additional resources and sources of information, let me just play through the screens that I used to talk about different things in the different kinds of devices. So here's a Windows 10 devices screen, one for iOS devices, and also one for Android devices. This way you can pause the video and see these steps on your screen, and hopefully that helps you out. So, additional sources of information. One thing that we would really like you to do is give us a call. We are at extension 3754, and that gets answered pretty much as long as the library is open, and we are willing to help you however we can. We are also online at rrpl.org/training, as well as on Facebook at rrpl training. There are official support pages for each of these kinds of devices. So there's a Windows support page at support.microsoft.com, and then you would choose Windows under the product drop down there. There is a support.apple.com page, and that would allow you to choose the device when you scroll down a little bit and get support for your iPad, iPod, iPhone, things like that, iMac. And also there's one for Google at support.google.com. You're seeing a pattern here, right? support.whatever.com. And theirs has /Android after that, but you can get to it from the main page, but I thought that would be easier. And there are manufacturer links there as well. So if you know you have a Samsung Android device, there's a link to get to Samsung there. And you may have to visit the maker or carrier of the device as well. So the carrier of your device would be like AT&T, Sprint, Verizon, Consumer Cellular, all those. And they may have individual support pages for their branded devices. Google's Android support page does show a lot of links, and so you might find it there. One other place to check is on your bill, your cellular bill, because certainly they're going to give you support information on that bill every time. YouTube is a good resource if you can hear it. So if you only have one device and it's not making noises on videos, you're probably not going to be helped by YouTube. But if you have that secondary device, you can play videos, you can listen to other people talk about things, and hopefully it will help you then. So, and last but not least, consult the books and ebooks at the library. So at the Rocky River Public Library, we have our books about smartphones and tablets at the beginning of nonfiction, just like every other Dewey Decimal System library. And that would be in 004 mainly. There are all photography stuff might be in another place. There's also a digital library. So at rrpl.org/digital-library, you'll find all sorts of resources there that you can download into a device. The best problem to have, of course, is no problem, and I hope that's the case with you. Thanks for watching today's episode of Online in Rocky River and Beyond. Have a great day.